We've been waiting and waiting, and it's finally here. We've been deprived of Craven the Hunter for longer than 2 years, it feels like. And we were promised this movie, and by Joe, we got it. Very excited to talk about Craven the Hunter. And is it the conclusion of Sony's tie-ins, their Spider-Man tie-ins that are never having Spider-Man in it? And joining me to talk about this is the great David Brody, America's favorite Brooklyn boy. I appreciate you being here to
and I appreciate that in honor of the small Craven box office, you have lessened the amount of people on this podcast to match the box office of Craven.
I was out to as many as 6 people about coming on this, 2 of whom said they were definitely going to see it. And then once it was released, they did not. And we may or may not get a visit from my friend McEneany, who I saw the movie with. Mostly I want him to come on and talk about it because he fell asleep during it. So I want to be able to have him talk about his understanding of what he was awake for. And we will talk about this in the context of all of the Sony tie-in films this year. We've had 3. We had Madam Web. We had Venom: The Last Dance, Venom 3, and now we're getting Craven. I feel like we just got Venom: The Last Dance. I guess it was less than 2 months ago. And we can rank these movies, and it's very hard to rank movies when they're as good as this. So, Mr. Brody, I appreciate you checking out this film because I know that you saw it just the other day. You hadn't seen it, and I did indeed send out the Brody signal and was hoping that you would indeed check it out. So I want to get your thoughts on Craven the Hunter, the film, but we can start off by talking a little bit about our familiarity with the character from Marvel Comics. He was originally introduced in Amazing Spider-Man number 15. I know you're not the biggest Steve Ditko fan, but
No.
This is really the way that I kind of remember him. I think the first thing I ever read with him, it was a reprint of Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 1, the first appearance of the Sinister Six. So he's one of the 6, the great Kraven was. So what are your thoughts on the Kraven character in terms of your familiarity of the comic book version?
I think I saw him in a Peter Parker, The Amazing Spider-Man when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't a top tier villain. He was part of the Sinister Six, so I did see him appear with the other members who seemed cooler than him. He had a terrible fur coat. He needed to put a shirt on.
Yes.
I just remember him being like kind of dopey looking. And
he was Jake Paul before Jake Paul was Jake Paul.
Yes, with a 70s porn mustache. So it's not like he wasn't like if they had done an Electro movie with with the lightning bolt head, the original Electro. Okay, if they had done Sandman again, but Kraven is like he's the 6th of the Sinister Six. He might even be the 7th of the Sinister Six. Vulture is a better villain than him. He's like Aquaman of the jungle. It's like who cares about He talks to lions. It's great. Who cares? So it didn't mean a lot to me. I only went to see the movie because of this podcast. So
yeah, well, I appreciate you do, but I assume you have like AMC A-list or one of those deals where you didn't really pay for it; it was included. I hope you didn't actually just buy a ticket. Did you buy a ticket just to Kraven?
I did, but I used my reward points to get popcorn.
All right. Well, at least there was some vig for you.
The theater was so empty, and I sent you a picture, but I sent it just now, unfortunately.
I'll bring it up as we talk. Yeah, I was just noticing it. Yeah.
It was so empty in the theater. How empty was it? That when I reclined my seats, because no one was sitting in front of me in the theater, the seats were blocking the screen. So I had to get up and reach over and lower the seat in front of me as if someone was sitting there so I could see the movie screen. Because I was alone in the theater, except for 2 people 3 rows up, a little to the right. There were 3 of us in the movie theater because my friend Jeff bailed when he saw the reviews. I was hoping, I was like, "Oh, you want to go see Kraven the new Marvel?" He said, "Oh yeah, okay." I said, "Don't read the reviews. Please don't see them." But he saw them. He's like, "I'm out." He's out. So I paid
It was out.
$14 something, 13 and change for a matinee. Got the free popcorn. I wish I get my money back, but I take one for the team, as they say.
Yeah, imagine if theaters let you get money back if you didn't enjoy the film. I think that there would be something to be said for that. And boy, would I have gotten a lot of refunds this year. But there are movies that I only saw because I have like the AMC list. I can't imagine, seeing Borderlands or, so many of the others. For me, KRAVEN the Hunter, and this is from after the time that you were reading comics, and this is a story called KRAVEN's Last Hunt that our buddy Eric Connor and I covered on the Geekscape Book Club earlier this year, talking about this really landmark story that I was probably far too young to be reading when it was published. But we spoke with J.M. DeMatteis, who wrote the story. And it's really sort of this epic story of him hunting down Spider-Man and thinking he kills him and taking over the role of Spider-Man. And there's more to it than that, but it's when we did our recent conversation about our favorite Marvel stories of all time, this was on my list. So he ended with a bang, pun intended, big pun intended.
Yeah.
So KRAVEN went out big, but before that, he was always pretty goofy. I have to.
Yeah, I did buy this, by the way. I'm going to read it, even though I know the ending. I bought it on your recommendation. I know he's popped up 3 or 4 times since he killed himself because, comics.
Yes,
but he's still basically dead, because when a character is that bad, you can leave him dead.
Yes, yeah, that's true.
To,
There's,
you can bring back the Goblin as the Hobgoblin.
Yeah, people aren't begging for KRAVEN to return. And by the way, our buddy Daniel Drew is in the chat. There were like 8 people in his theater, I think. And everybody should check out Daniel's blog. He posted his thoughts. Daniel, I'm spinning too many plates. Put in the chat where people can find your blog. But he does say it wasn't a horrible movie, but it was a bad KRAVEN movie. And we'll talk about some cameos that brought most of the enjoyment. One of them comes way too late in the movie where I'm like, oh, this is cool, but it's not really. And he's watching, Daniel Drew is, while he's arranging his comics that he got Thursday for photos for the blog. Daniel always gets a good haul of comics every Thursday. That used to be me. I loved the trip to first I used to go to the newsstand in town where I grew up, and then I had to take a much longer trip to the comic shop after that place closed. But New Comic Day was always big, it's not like that anymore, because now I occasionally I'll sample a title or two and buy. If I buy 2 comics in the same month, it's kind of impressive. And Brody, I'll tell you, if I'm buying 2 comics in the same month, one of them was written by Chris Claremont. That's always
very
the
nice.
case. Yeah.
Well, I used to go to Comic Day at a comic book store that was about 15 minutes away by car. My parents would drive me there, and I would spend all of my money at the comic book store. Then one day the owner says to me, he heard me talking. I would spout out issues and cover art. And I knew what I was talking about at 13, 14, 15, whatever I was. And he said, I'm opening up another look. That's it. That's my seat right there. You see, I got dead center seat and there's nobody else there. But I literally had to lower the seat because you can see the other 2 are blocking the screen. Yeah. Thank you, AMC, for poor design. But yeah, there's nobody in that seat, so I lowered it.
So, by the way, Daniel gets his comics every other Thursday, so 2 weeks at a time. So the guy was opening another location. Yeah.
Yeah, he opened up in a flea market and he had a small booth and he hired me. So I actually worked for a comic booth in a flea market for a number of years, where he would basically not even pay me. He would just say, you get $30 worth of comics. I'd be like, okay. And I would just take the comics I wanted. And that's how I got paid.
When comics were, when I started, they were 60 cents. The idea of $30 was actually pretty crazy, because that was a lot of comics. Now, for $30, you might get 5. If you're really lucky, you'll get 6 comics, which is insane. Speaking of comics of the other kind, though, we're joined now by my friend Liam McEneany. Liam, thank you so much for being here. I don't believe you know my friend David Brody here. David, that is Liam. Liam, that is David.
Always nice to make a new friend.
And David is good people. He has a podcast called The Brooklyn Boys. He's also a Mets fan. So obviously that is my definition of good people. I would like to, now that Liam is here with us, I'd like to do a quick show of hands for our visual audience. Raise your hand if you stayed awake for the whole movie of Kraven the Hunter. That's me. Wait a minute. Liam, I think you're lying to our audience.
Did I? Oh, right, I did. I fell asleep.
to the point you said, you have to nudge me if I start snoring. And I'm like, well, you were already snoring. And then you didn't snore after that. So
no, I fell asleep last night during juror number 2 also.
Oh, man, the movies that you stay awake during, it's kind of interesting.
So you never got to see juror number 3. So you'll have to go back and watch.
Well, no, there's a point in the beginning of the movie where the guy stands up and the judge goes, "You're juror number 2." And I was just like the name of the movie.
He said it. He said it. There it is. He said it.
And then I realized exactly what the whole plot would be. And I was like, I can take a nap during the first act. And I did.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And there was kind of a moment, although you kind of felt it coming on with Kraven, I believe, right? You expected that this was maybe going to be one that you didn't keep your eyes open for all 90 minutes. But and Liam is always so kind that I was asking him after the fact that I don't know if we've ever gone to a movie together that we were both like, oh, that one was really good. You know, we always ended because it was Borderlands. It was this. And I didn't see Venom with you. But
I liked Venom. I have to say I did like Venom.
Well, compared to this, you know,
right.
It's hard to, and we will try to rank the 2024 Sony Spider-Man spin-off movies, all 3 of them. But I assume that your expectations headed into this, Liam, were not high.
No. You know, the thing is, the Sony has been kind of like in a tailspin since Amy Pascal.
Yeah.
And since she had to leave, and so they've been building this Spider-Man but without Spider-Man cinematic universe, with the idea that like by the time we got to Kraven the Hunter, you would love their movies about antiheroes so much that you'd be dying for a team-up movie, which is when we get the Sinister Six movie.
Of course.
And it's just been, every movie's been worse than the next, to the point where now I would like to see Sinister Six. So I can't imagine like what happens when you put all these terrible characters together.
Yeah, I mean, it's you know, it wouldn't be as entertaining as Mystery Men, but it would be a lot closer to Mystery Men than it would to the Sinister Six. And right. David, I know you were saying earlier before Liam popped in that you were not planning on seeing this movie, but I kind of guilted you into doing it so that we could do the podcast before Christmas. So I appreciate you going to see it, but after it was over, you were probably like, oh, I didn't expect this. You probably expected kind of what we got, or did it even sink to lower depths?
Well, I realized why they released the first 8 minutes, because that was the really best part of the movie, was the first 8 minutes. And then it was downhill. We all saw the 8 minutes. We're like, all right, it's promising. There's some action. You know, there's some blood. It could be good. It could be really violent.
Sure.
And then it was not. And it was stupid. And then he kills his father the same way we've all seen like 7 or 8 times in other projects, where the hunter has the bullets taken out of his gun and then the animal kills him because he hasn't got the bullets. Yeah. I mean, you couldn't even do that originally. So it was just between the editing and the we can talk about this in more detail. Sure. But the horrible, is it ADR, the voiceover?
Additional dialogue recording. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Where it was like, we have to go there now. Like it was just dropped in vocals when they're standing by the plane and her back is to him. And she's like, we have to go there now. And it was like she was in a closet. I mean, you could put ambiance in the background and make it sound like you're outdoors. It was just, there was no effort made. It wasn't even like it wasn't just poorly written. It was put together by high school students.
Well, the thing is, I guarantee you that was the result of test screenings where audiences were like, it doesn't make sense. Like they're at the plane and then they're at the other thing. And they're like, okay, instead of spending money on reshoots, we'll just drop in some dialogue where you can't see their mouths explaining what they're doing.
Yeah,
So
I
that
totally get the thought process, but do it well.
The example that our buddy Eric Connor and I always use when we talk about bad ADR, it was the intentionally bad ADR for the
Lottery.
Simpsons episode that was in the lead up to the Super Bowl, when they were like, yes, I'm rooting for the Atlanta Falcons. And, it was, the point was that it was added after the fact. There were
Remember
a
the
couple
lottery,
of those.
the lottery commercials in New York, if you remember, when they would go, tonight's lotto jackpot is $75 million. That's what it reminded me of, where they just drop in the number.
Well, there's certainly no $75 million associated with this film.
11.
Yeah. In fact, Liam, you were not on this thread, but Mr. Brody and Eric Connor and I, we did have a text thread on predicting the box office take for opening weekend. And what was your guess, Mr. Brody?
Well, Eric's was 13, mine was 12, and you tell everybody what you did.
Well, I decided that I was going to play Price is Right rules, and I said $1. And I feel like, Liam, you have to appreciate the fact that I decided to change the rules midstream. And as we can see from Box Office Mojo, opening weekend was indeed $11 million. And because I won, Eric sent me an $11 gift card to Carl's Jr., which I am planning on using today. Very excited about that. So yes.
I can tell you what's really exciting if you look at the numbers like in detail, because they have them like, because where it says worldwide, right? Like the international numbers, you see how many people you can literally see how many people in Russia went to this movie. It's always astonishing to see how many tickets are sold in Botswana. and it's always these terrible action movies that you don't need to understand the dialogue. Anyway.
Yeah,
sorry.
But it does. No, it's fine. It is always interesting because, I guess that maybe the Russian people responded to people doing bad Russian accents. They're like, this is how we talk here in Russia. I like hearing that in the movies. And I feel like I just slid into Red Guardian. David Harbour
accent is good. The good accent.
Actually, he does have a good one. I love Red Guardian.
But speaking of Russell Crowe.
Yes.
Or as I like to call him, our own Orson Welles. He did not look good, and it looked like he was counting the minutes till he was out of the movie.
Much like Orson Welles used to.
Yeah.
Russell Crowe. That's
oh my goodness. What are we doing here? Come on.
But like literally his character died and he did a fist pump. And then he got up and went, all right, so long, suckers.
You could actually see him stand up and be like, that's a wrap on Russell Crowe. And he claps himself off. But, the only thing missing was that, he didn't sing. I was hoping that we would get more from him out of, like we did in Les Mis. But, it's interesting because, Liam, you're talking about how he's sort of coming to Orson Welles, and if he ever did a commercial that started off with, we know a remote farm in Lincolnshire where Mrs. Buckley lives. Every July, peas grow there. I mean, do you really mean that? Do you really want to say July over the snow? Isn't that the fun? Anyway, everybody.
Olson, would you mind if we do it one more time?
There's a lot of directing going on here.
The French have a champagne.
We've the early days of the Black Cast, we spent a lot of time with those commercials, and it's one of the most fun things. I would love for Russell Crowe to reach that level. So
here's the thing, and speaking of the accent work, and I really just wanted to bring this up because out of all the things that took me out of the movie, Russell Crowe is a Russian crime lord, who is raising his kids, who both have American accents, even though they both go to a British boarding school.
All right. Well, it was upstate New York, was where the boarding school was. But then he has a home in the UK. So when they're kids, it's somewhere in upstate New York that, honestly, I don't know what part of Romania they think looks like upstate New York. But that didn't actually they didn't pull it off there. But I actually forget. I have some notes as to where they filmed this wonderful production. So yeah, I'm sorry. It filming occurred in Iceland in February 2022, and you kind of feel that in the prison scenes. So um, I don't usually put a lot of weight specifically on something called the tomato meter. It's not that interesting to me, but when it's registered as low as this, I feel like we can't ignore the fact that the critics gave it a 16%, which that part doesn't surprise me. But the popcorn meter at 73, I mean, are those Sony employees that are leaving favorable reviews there? What do you think, Liam, about the tomato meter? I'm not a big fan. I feel like it's a terrible way to judge movies, but it's hard to not talk about this disparity as we talk about this film.
Well, as a Rotten Tomatoes reviewer myself, I do like to know
Oh,
my vote is counted.
oh,
Well, that's good. Our buddy Eric Connor set me up. I'm a voting member in the Razzies beginning next year, so I am also part of a very distinguished organization, and I think that what makes this fun, Brody, is if we actually take the time to read off some of the reviews. So these are from critics, though. And what I loved is Zachary Barnes from the Wall Street Journal. About as exciting as the board meeting from which it surely sprang. And Kevin Mayer from the Times in the UK says, "Don't believe the bad buzz. This comic book adaptation is a goofy delight."
Well, that's still 3.5 rating, by the way.
What's that? The 3.5 rating. Yeah.
That's like 3 out of 5 right there. So it's like that was the best they could do, and it was still a mediocre review at best.
Would either of you characterize this film as a goofy delight? I'll leave it open to the floor. Either one of you want to chime in on the goofy delight?
I will lean on the goofy and lean away from the delight. If I had them on the seesaw, the goofy would definitely be higher, possibly elevated into the air, and the delight would go right down the other side.
I hate to do a Siskel and Ebert on you here, but there's nothing goofy about that movie. Like it took itself so seriously.
Oh, I thought the plot holes were goofy and the plot was goofy, even though it wasn't humorously goofy.
Right.
Like it wasn't floppy ear hat Disney Park goofy. It was like me sitting there going, well, that's fucking goofy. You know, that's the kind of goofy I'm talking about.
It's like my favorite goofy short cartoon, and Daniel chimes in with Turkish Delight. There's a goofy cartoon where he tries to quit smoking because he finds out it's bad for him, and he has so much trouble smoking, quitting smoking. He just embraces it, and you've probably seen a meme or an image. He has his mouth filled with 100 cigarettes at one point, and he's like, "I love to smoke." So it feels a little bit more like that goofy. And, the thing about when you look at Rotten Tomatoes, we have on our screen for our visual audience a couple of 5-star actual audience reviews, which I feel like my theory. I mean, there's a lot of 5-star reviews here. And then we get down like this one. Great story. Sometimes bad writing was obvious, but overall did enjoy it. And would you think that the people in our theater, Liam, enjoyed this movie? Do you think any of them enjoyed it?
Yeah, actually, I would say, there was that couple behind us who were really into it, or they were having very quiet sex. I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, either way, we didn't want to turn around.
Either way, I napped through it. No, I mean, here's the thing. That's 1,000+ verified reviewers, which means 1,000 people who bought a ticket and enjoyed that movie so much that they then went to Rotten Tomatoes and shared their love of this movie. But there are so many dumb people out there that I believe. I just, I guarantee there's 1,000 people out there who just love KRAVEN the Hunter and had to let you know.
Yeah, well, that's true. I mean, look, if I did love this movie, I would be very excited to tell everyone.
Listen, but these days there's people who will support anything and anyone. Who knows what they're into?
Well,
who can say?
Who can say? But I think that what sets us apart from some bad movies is that I did think some of the action sequences while very far-fetched, and you don't want to peel back, and you have to have complete suspension of disbelief. But the sequence where he's running through London trying to catch up with the car, I thought that was reasonably well done. Now he's climbing up on the sides of buildings, which that is a Spider-Man ability, not a Kraven the Hunter ability, but Spidey wasn't going to be in this.
But here's the thing. He did parkour.
Yeah.
He ran on all four legs. He ran up and down the sides of, buildings and walls and stuff. So it's more like a cockroach than the Spider-Man.
What did you think about any of the sequences, Brody? Is there anything where you're like, okay, this has been terrible, but these 2 to 3 minutes I can isolate, and it might make for a good YouTube clip at some point?
Well, I have a bunch of notes, so let me address the scene that we're talking about now.
Sure.
The chase scene.
Yes.
I enjoyed the chase scene up until the point where he was going through the like it was a upper roadway of some kind, right? Some kind of walkway, and then he sees the car a block away make a right out of sight. Then he jumps, and now he's jumping on the car. I don't know how he got to the car that was a block and a half away. I would like some kind of explanation, maybe as a voiceover. I'm going to cut through the alley and then, show him. And then he jumps on the car. I have never seen an SUV with a roll bar above the windshield that he was holding on to. Perhaps that's a thing. I haven't Googled it, but boy, lucky for him that the SUV he jumped on had a roll bar that he could hold on to for the action scene. It was,
that
it
was
fine.
Indeed very lucky, Brody. I agree.
Lucky for him that the bad guys chose that car. Had they chosen, a Toyota RAV4 and a RAV4, they would not have the roll bar there. He would have just flown right off the windshield.
As someone who drives a Toyota RAV4, I would say, yes, they don't have a roll bar. And Daniel Drew points out that he basically had DC Comics Vixen powers. Well, look, whatever he had, he didn't have Kraven's powers. But back to your thoughts and your notes, Brody.
Yeah, the action scene at the beginning, the jail scene, I liked very much. I liked the way except for when they had him dead to rights with a machine gun and he just, did a little zigzag around the bullets. That was a little, but the thing I didn't understand, perhaps you gentlemen can explain it to me. He had the fake tattoo, so he would look like the prisoner that had the tattoo, right?
Yes.
And they showed him peeing behind the building by himself at some point.
Yes.
Maybe whatever he's doing.
Nope. Well, I assume he was peeing, but
right.
perhaps.
How did he get the prisoner with the tattoo that matched the one on his neck to go behind the building where he could kill him quietly and then assume how he wasn't in the truck to begin with. He met them at the rest stop and he killed the guy with the matching tattoo and then assumed his identity. No one recognized that he wasn't the same guy. He has long hair, which covered the tattoo, which means nobody saw the identifying thing anyway when he got on the bus. And also he found a way to get the shackles on himself. That just made no sense to me.
What I like about talking about these movies and podcasting about them is that things like this will come up and you can tell that more thought and more questions are being asked than at any point in the writing or production process.
Yes.
I'd like to think that Kraven had a fishing pole with carrot on the end and he dangled it in front of that prisoner who then went around to the other side.
Or maybe a note that said, follow this. And then he just reeled it back in.
Do you like me? Check the box yes or the box no. What were you going to say, Liam?
I like to think that he just was giving the guy a lot of coffee right before we saw the scene.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe he was assuming that maybe he did legitimately go around to pee on that side of the building, but
maybe.
But again, how would you know the guy with the neck tattoo is going to be the one guy to go behind the building to pee, and you have the tattoo ready to go?
He's like Hank Hill. He has a narrow urethra, and it was in his file. What were you going to say, Liam? I'm sorry.
I was going to say he read the script.
Oh,
because here's the thing, right? I love to think that everybody was on set and some PA's like, but wait, he's got long hair, so why is he getting a tattoo? And someone just went, "Shut up!"
Right? Why not put it on his face like a teardrop by his eye, something that you'd see?
And then everybody else goes, "Shut up."
Yeah, well, that is, we highlighted on a past show the audio commentary from Michael Bay's Armageddon, and
yes,
and Affleck is talking about how basically he made this exact same point, and Michael Bay said, "Shut the fuck up, Ben."
Yeah.
So it was like asking one of those questions that are like, this all doesn't actually make sense, and nobody needs that there.
By the way, that commentary is on YouTube, and I highly recommend it for everybody.
I would say don't watch the film Armageddon, but absolutely watch that commentary. It's
I'll tell you this. I'm sorry to digress for 1 second,
that's
but
okay.
That's what we do.
Yeah,
I got The Rock and Armageddon on the Criterion DVD with all the commentary. And Michael Bay, when he thinks that nobody's ever going to see this, just talking honestly about dealing with the studio is excellent. Like, just talking about how he had all these struggles with the studio and they wouldn't let him do what he wanted to do and how mad he got and how, like, basically he was screaming on the phone at them every other day. Just amazing.
I mean, that sounds amazing. Yeah, I know that there are some James Bond Laserdisc commentaries that were never circulated on any other format because the producers talked a little too honestly about things like how women were treated on set. So you can find those on YouTube too. YouTube really is sort of a great turn of events for I would say for our society.
Genuinely hearing Nicolas Cage talk about how he just mimicked Elvis to do one walk halfway through a scene.
Well, we can only hope that one day we'll get to enjoy a really rousing director's commentary for KRAVEN. And a lot of times in those days when physical media was such a part of it, you would record the director's commentary before the movie came out, so that you had it, even if it was a colossal failure. But I feel like this isn't really necessarily the film that we're going to get there. Now, Brody, you said you took notes. I know Liam,
I have a lot of notes.
I know Liam didn't because I had to dab the corners of his mouth to make sure that the drool didn't get into my popcorn.
I slept for 10 minutes.
But boy, what a 10 minutes. That's the thing, Liam. You missed the 10 great minutes of this movie, and you'll never know.
But speaking of popcorn, I just want to point out Christian had a gigantic tub of popcorn, more than one man should eat, and yet he didn't offer me any.
I thought about getting you the box, but I felt like usually you've gotten some before. And you know what? I was so focused on only drinking one soda because someone might have made the rounds after a past trip to the movie theater talking about how I got up to refill it and then I refilled it a second time before I left. And the most distinguished potato on the internet, Cardiff Electric, definitely was merciless for at least a month about that. So
believe it this way, this movie was so not engaging that I was literally sitting there like, I wonder if Christian ever offers anyone popcorn or if it's just my hands are dirty.
If you'd gotten there when I did, I would have gotten the box and been like, give me the free refill. And I was just so engrossed to what was happening on the screen, Liam.
Right. I'm not going to have a box anyway. It's all right.
Well, they do have they do have the AMC feed bags now. So next time we go for KRAVEN 2. All right, Mr. Brody, give us some more of your notes.
All right, I'm going to give you some notes, and then I will analyze the dumbest action scene in the movie. My notes. You have a woman who has some kind of magic potion that brings you back from the dead, and she keeps it in her office drawer.
Yep.
So found that to be interesting. The dumbest line in the movie, you may not have realized this is the dumbest line, but this is the quote because I stopped and I typed it down. When talking about her grandmother in Africa, she says, "She died not long after my trip, and I never saw her again." In that order.
Yeah. Yeah,
I would think you'd say, I never saw her again. She died shortly after my trip. But no, she died, and I never saw her again after that.
There's a great local news clip from years ago that goes around, and the reporter on the scene talks about how, and they were unfortunately dead at the scene. They were unavailable for comment. We're like, yes, you did establish that they were in fact dead.
So she must have died of something. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, where she says we couldn't find any of the victims to speak to or something like that. Another one exactly. Yeah.
But the grandmother must have died of something that can't be cured by that potion. Like
Right.
like her arms must have been chopped off, or her head, or something. Like, because they have a potion that brings you back from the dead.
Right, but only if you're mauled by a lion. So I think that that perhaps that's what did not do Grandma in. And yeah, that the character of Calypso factors into some later comic book stories of Kraven. And I don't know if they were setting up a Kraven the Hunter franchise,
They
because
were.
obviously all of this is supposed to be part of Sony's Spider-Man spin-offs, building towards Sinister Six.
Oh no, brother! I read up on this movie.
Okay.
They were planning a trilogy.
Oh,
wow.
Well, Chameleon and Jackal, and was mentioned.
Well, and we're gonna have to talk about the Rhino at some point. It's interesting because they take the concept of Kraven the Hunter, and look, we had this with Morbius. We have this to an extent with Venom, except Morbius and Venom in the comics had sort of an anti-hero sort of positioning by this point that the movies came out. Kraven never had that. I mean, I talked about the story where he hunted down and believes he kills Spider-Man and takes over the mantle of Spider-Man. So he never has the misunderstood anti-hero, but they feel like that's what he needs to be. And I find it interesting that, you know, he heads off and he has his list of people to kill. So basically, it's a cross between My Name is Earl and the old Fred Dryer primetime show Hunter, you know? So he finds out what he needs to do. He
Hunter.
Gets the job. Yeah. Well,
Or maybe Kolchak the Night Stalker.
You know what? Now you're onto something.
That was a great one-season show.
It was.
The second season just would have messed it up. So
the other great thing I learned from reading about this movie is the list of people they had the balls to ask to star as Kraven.
Oh, tell me more.
Settled on this guy is like, well, we asked
DiCaprio.
Yeah, well, sure. We asked DiCaprio. We asked, but Brad Pitt was the one that jumped out at me. It's like, if you're gonna drag Brad Pitt into this comic book movies, it's not going to be Kraven.
No, yeah,
it's going to be an MCU. He gets to star as Iron Man type shit.
Yeah, the first rule of Kraven the Hunter is don't talk about Kraven the Hunter.
Like, can you imagine his rep just get it? Like, she must have been holding it like dirty toilet paper. This offer,
and I'm sure that the script was not passed along. You know, there's no way. Like, you have reps so that Kraven the Hunter does not get passed along to you.
Not even a log line, just a number on a piece of paper.
What were some of the other thoughts you had, Mr. Brody?
Okay, so the Calypso thing. He finds Calypso at the funeral, and she says, "How did you find me?" He goes, "I'm a hunter. I have my ways." I mean, that's a great way to explain. There's no way to explain it. I have my ways. I have the internet. I Googled you. Even though I don't know your name, nobody knows who saved me. There's no record of anything, but I found you. Okay. When they bring Calypso to Siberia, somehow she has a black leather outfit perfect for archery. When she was wearing a professional outfit when she left her building in a hurry, she somehow now has a leather tunic on. I don't know how that happened.
I believe everyone in Siberia has that outfit.
Right.
Except that when Putin wears his, he has his shirt off.
Right. They did the CSI thing that we've seen in 100 detective shows where the poison that he used to kill people, Kraven, is only grown in 1 square yard of property has to be in eastern Siberia. And that must be where he is right now, because he couldn't have bought the poison anywhere else. It's not available anywhere else in the world, right? It's only, you have to get it in that one little piece of land. And even though he's been traveling all over the world, he has to be home right now when we go there. Then they call and say, they put the brother on the phone. He goes, "I'm sorry, they made me call you." Somehow he knows that means they're in Siberia right near his house, because he immediately starts getting all the weapons ready, because he knows the phone call means they found him somehow. Right? Unbelievable. Then the other
Brody, I do think that Michael Bay would say, "Get this Brody guy out of here." He's
no,
too many questions.
I got one more from Michael Bay. They set him up, right? They have Calypso talk to her top secret informant in the alleyway.
Sure.
And he tells her he's at this castle, and that's where they're holding the hostage, right? That's the brother is at this, he's there. So they know he's going there. So instead of sending him to a warehouse that's set to explode and kill him, they sent him to the actual place where the actual bad guy is. He kills like 5 guys before they even like realize it's him, even though they know he's coming.
Mm.
And then he gets into a fight with the bad guy. And then for some reason, the rocket launcher guy is on the mountain across, but didn't shoot it at him when he was climbing the building at the beginning. And they could have taken him out. None of it made any sense. Just the whole. I'm sorry.
No. Look, I agree with all of that. And you know, even when I enjoy a far-fetched movie, I try to not get bogged down in those things. But when the movie's not good, it's a lot harder to not have the time to think about some of those questions. By the way, Daniel Drew in the chat, the best part of this movie are actually some of these posters I've never seen. I like them. Yeah, when you look for international posters for some of these, you know, and some of the different formats, you know, that's where you get to see like the 4DX and the D box. And then, you know, we go back to Spider-Man and all that. But I'm glad someone appreciated that. Thank you, Daniel. But Daniel also said the moment Sony said that KRAVEN would be the hunter of hunters, I was like, this is just the same disservice of characters they did with Cletus Cassidy, who is Woody Harrelson's character in Venom 2, Let There Be Carnage. And we can compare this film to the Venom franchise as we start to wind down. But I think that I like how many questions you have, Brody. Do you have any thoughts for Brody's question, or did it make you feel like this must have all happened during the 10 minutes of nap time?
No, I mean, the thing is, you know, this movie is literally the epitome of, you know, this happened because the plot needed it to happen.
Yes.
You know, there's just no other explanation for literally anything. What I found really egregious, I mean, that stuff, I'm just so used to it because I watched so many bad action movies. What I found particularly egregious was the brother was an incredible mimic, which you know, because he could lip sync to a Bing Crosby record.
Yeah, that was pretty impressive.
That's the kind of thing, honestly, where I watch it and I'm like, this movie really took me out. Like this movie really took me out of what I'm supposed to be feeling. The sudden heel turn that he does at the end and becomes the chameleon.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
And I mean, that is one of those things that's kind of fun because you know the character and you see him with like the white face that you know, we know the chameleon for having basically. But it comes, as I said earlier, it comes so late in the movie that there's no chance that you're actually going to appreciate that. You know, it's like it's the definition of too little, too late. And then that is just like, okay, man, they really, up until the point of cutting this together in post-production, they were really sure that they were doing that Sinister Six movie, you know? You know, even KRAVEN the Hunter's first appearance has that little picture of the chameleon down there. So I thought seeing him with the white face, especially it's sort of like the 90s way that his face morphed, the Todd McFarlane era of the chameleon, I was excited to see him, but again, too little, too late. And I am glad to not have a movie where this kid's going to play the chameleon the whole time. But Brody, did you get any satisfaction? Again, that's very late in the movie. Like there's maybe 2 minutes after that.
You know what? The terrible voiceover impressions of lip syncing to other people, even when he lip synced Russell Crowe.
right.
Like he couldn't even. How hard is it to go get into your room? Like whatever he said, you can do a bad Russell Crowe and get the point across that you're trying to do your father's voice. But the fact that they had to, the fact that you had to like voice lip sync actual Russell Crowe dialogue, it was just horrific. I think the chameleon scene at the end would have been a post-credit scene had they been making more Spider-Verse movies.
I feel like they thought that there was any chance that anyone would stay in their seat as soon as the credits started.
I think you're right. I think that was supposed to be a post-credit scene.
Yeah. I think that was the big tease. Like, oh, his brother's what a great post-credit scene. But because there's no other movies, they didn't make it. They just moved it into the movie. And then it just died flat because it wasn't like a bonus. It was like, oh, you just ended the movie and there's no sequel. And what was the point of that? We're never going to see that character.
Hello,
Marvel. We'll give you Chameleon for $8,000.
I gotta give it to Sony though. They stuck with this series a lot longer than Universal did with their Dark Universe series. Like Dark Universe lasted 2 movies. They're like, we can't make a hit with a Tom Cruise movie, so we're just pulling the plug on the whole thing. Whereas Sony was like, look, we'll spend $1 billion. People will like it eventually.
Yeah, I mean, and it's also, you're reminding me that there were like 7 Narnia books, and Disney made 2, and then they punted the 3rd one over to someone else. I don't even remember what studio that was, and then they're like, "Yeah, I guess we're done with Narnia." And then you're also like, "Oh yeah, that's the reason why Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is the only story that anybody knows."
But they're redoing Narnia again. They're rebooting the Narnias.
That's good. I hope that they give the Lion even more Jesus-y overtones. I think it wasn't strong enough in that version.
Well, to be fair, that was their source material.
I mean, it's C.S. Lewis. Yeah, I see what you're saying. So we're talking about his brother, the actor Fred Hetchinger. I thought I'd never seen in anything, and I looked him up. He's actually one of the twin emperors in Gladiator 2, a film I did really like. I swear I liked a movie this year, and I didn't recognize him, but I should have. I guess he's also from White Lotus, but as I'm watching this movie, I'm like, I don't know who this kid is, but he's bugging me. He's actually perfect for his role in Gladiator 2. Can
you imagine at some point this kid and his agent were like, this is the year of Hettinger. This is the year we break out. It all comes together. All of the work has been building to 2024.
Especially because this movie was supposed to come out in the summer of 2023, then the fall of 2023, and then it waited all this time. There's a lot of those issues. But speaking of issues, Brody, I know you've probably got some more on that little notepad. Like you sat there with a hat that said "scoop" on it, and you were taking quick notes on your little legal pad.
The only other thing that bothered me was, again, it happens because it needs to happen. She's on the phone with KRAVEN. She's not in her office. She's in the hallway. And then she's standing at the glass looking down at the lobby as he's saying, you're not safe. You need to get out of there. Just as the half a second, there's 5 guys in black suits walking in formation into the building. She realizes they can't possibly be just 5 guys who work in the building. It's like, oh my God, I got to get out of here. There's 5 guys just walk. Like, it was just come on. Does everything have to be coincidence? There was just no thought put into this movie that there'd be some other way she would know they were there. Like, oh, she has security cameras. She watches she's by the glass. Like, oh, there's 5 guys. And when they went to Siberia, how did they all get 5 dark black tinted window SUVs ready to go? Like the Rhino flies all these men out. How did he get the men? Where'd they come from? And then they're just inside. Just all of it was. And then he's looking. One last thing. He's looking for his brother. Right? They kidnapped his brother in England. So while he's trying to find his brother, he decides, I need to think for a minute. I'm going to fly back to Siberia to my dome, my fortress of solitude, and sit in Siberia. So if I get a clue, I'm right there near England to go find my brother. Like, what?
I have no trouble following this from points A, B, to C, but what were you going to say, Liam?
I was going to say I did have a problem with the whole, Siberia is a 15-minute Ryanair flight from London. Yeah. Just like, you know what? Everybody, let's all go to Siberia now.
Yeah, it's why they put prisoners there, because it's so easy to get to.
EasyJet flies direct from Heathrow. You don't have to transfer in Moscow or anything. Go ahead.
Also, I'm sure a heavily armed army of dudes with guns and bazookas have no trouble getting through Russian security.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's no issue with that.
When they rented the black SUVs, they came with the weapons, Liam. Duh.
Daniel Drew brings up characters I think we need to spend more time with, and this is perfect timing. So Daniel Drew brings up the question. The Rhino goo thing was so weird. Has there been anything remotely like this for any version of Rhino in the comics, or did Sony just make up some stupid idea? I think it's the latter. I am by no means a Rhino historian, but I've read many comics that the character appears in. I could tell you a lot more about the Juggernaut, who is a similar character. But the goo, the injections, turning in. No, I feel like that's left over from a different movie.
Right.
Much like it was well documented by Kevin Smith that Warner Brothers wanted to have a giant spider fight Superman in the Superman movie that he did a treatment for. And then when that Superman movie didn't happen, they just stuck it into Wild Wild West. AKA Wiki Wild, Wiki Wild, Wild Wild West is the international title of that. Does that strike you guys as like somebody had this idea of like, yeah, I don't care how you get to it, but we need to inject ourselves with some goo and give yourselves a little tube?
No, they didn't. Do you know why that was there? Don't you?
No.
So that in the 5 minutes that the powerful Rhino couldn't snap Kraven's neck for some reason, he was able to look down, think about it, come up with a plan again while he's being choked by a rhino, and then stab him in the hole. That was the port in the Death Star, is what that was.
Oh, yeah.
It was. He was. What was he shooting? What was Luke shooting? When he was a kid?
It's just the reactor. In the 3 Star Wars movies where the plot is we have to blow up the Death Star. I don't even remember what it is that they're trying to blow up, but it's like the reactor.
The reactor, yeah. But when he was a kid, he was shooting possum or something. Yeah. But what was the Star Wars word?
Womp rats.
Womp rats.
Yeah, womp rats. Right.
Pigs.
Yeah. So that's basically what it was. He had to.
And this is why Daniel Drew's here. It's the exhaust port. So
the exhaust port.
It all has to.
The Rhino needed an exhaust port.
Right.
Well, he clearly did. And Chris Tuthill checking in from across the pond. Evening all. Great to see you, sir.
Oh, he's from England. He must be like 15 minutes away from East Siberia.
Yeah. Hey, Chris, can you fly to Siberia and then message us from the Siberia airport before the end of the show?
Bring a submachine gun through customs.
And a bazooka.
What were you going to say before we started talking about air travel, Liam?
I was just going to say, I remember the Rhino as being a gigantic, huge guy in the comics and not the poor man's Christoph Waltz. Right. So like the goo thing, it felt like they were trying to do a Christopher Nolan and just have a grounded real world type explanation for why the Rhino's the Rhino instead of just going nuts with it and actually having fun.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think that they clearly had a concept that they're like, well, this is going to be our Rhino. This is going to be our concept. And we're not going to try to incorporate anything that makes any degree of sense. The Rhino, of course, I believe first appearing.
There he is.
First appearance. This is Amazing Spider-Man number 41, which, Brody, you'll be relieved because at this point, they had moved on to John Romita Sr.
Yes,
and
you could see the artwork's different.
Steve Ditko was no longer.
I had that comic. Yeah, how's that?
Yeah,
but it was a reprint actually, but still.
Yeah. Well, Deadpool makes this great point. Great to see you in here, Deadpool. What we want is more realistic superheroes. Look, I blame Zack Snyder for that. All right, he did the thing where like, oh man, those Batman movies worked really well. What if we did that with Superman? Okay, We've already missed the point. As we're talking just yesterday, James Gunn unveils a Superman teaser trailer, and it's like, well, yeah, that's kind of what it's supposed to be like. Not like, I'm gonna snap General Zod's neck in the trailer.
I'm gonna say, it made me a little sad how down Superman was throughout that whole trailer.
The new one,
well, people throwing garbage at him and fucking. Him getting slammed and being rescued by Crypto. I'm like, I don't know, maybe I'm getting too old, but
well, I hope it ends up well for him at the end, though. I mean, who's to say?
You don't know what he posted on X and the TikTok videos that got him that reaction from people. I think that he probably deserved to have that reaction. Superman,
he could have been spreading conspiracy theories about medicine or something, and people got mad.
Quick detour in the chat. Numero uno, Josh Denny fan. I've been at a party with Josh Denny. He's friends with my buddy Dick Masterson. What's everyone's favorite John Ford film and why? Stagecoach. But if anybody else wants to disagree, they're welcome to. But
it's really tough. First of all, Josh Denny fan likes to troll me, so that's what's going on here.
Okay.
He's a guy who.
Are you telling me he's not an actual Josh Denny fan?
No, he's someone who likes to come to podcasts I'm on and troll me.
Oh, okay.
Usually there's a lot of viewers and chat and just gets drowned out. But
yeah. Well, I thought that non sequitur John Ford question.
No, he runs a Liam parody Twitter account, so that's what's going on here.
I have seen that account. I have seen comments that I know are not from you.
Yes.
You're hey, it's Liam on social media. That's what
I am, and he's hey, it ain't Liam. So
are we going around the room for this answer?
Yeah, if you want to, go ahead.
Oh my
go ahead
God.
if you have a John Ford answer.
Not a favorite, not a fan of the movies, but I'd really love to see you tonight is my favorite song by him, which is John Ford Coley reference. No, nobody, just me. All right, I'll check out.
Sorry, I usually I go pretty deep with you, Brody. That one I just
the song, and I'd really love to see you tonight. John Ford Coley, come on, nobody knows.
I didn't know who did that, but
that was his biggest hit.
Chris Tuttle says, I'm enjoying the realism being brought into these films, but I am only a part-time fan, so I can see it being frustrating if it's not your thing. I mean, I would love to be a part-time fan. I could duck into KRAVEN the Hunter and never think about it again. But what were you going to say, Liam?
I was going to answer the John Ford thing.
Yeah, please. Yeah. I realized as I was starting to read that, I'm like, I think he has a John Ford thought.
Stagecoach is a great movie.
Yeah.
I think it's a tie between The Searchers and The Long Voyage Home.
Searchers is pretty great. Yeah. Yes, thank you. These are excellent film discussion questions. By the way, Deadfool thought that Liam's Twitter account was the parody account. Yeah, because there's I think Louis C.K.'s Twitter is I am not Louis C.K. You have people that are Sam Roberts, who people know from Opie and Anthony. He's not Sam. So I think that it's one of those times where that's actually not you though, Liam.
Oh no, I'm leaving Twitter, so it's all good.
Are you heading over to Blue Sky?
I'm already on Blue Sky.
Oh. Are you also, hey, it's Liam over there?
I've got under 200 fans already, followers. So
I'm not even going to look at
my favorite porn site, under 200 fans.
He was really just hoping to make up for that song reference that I still don't get.
I'm going to send you the song on Spotify. You'll be like, I've heard that. My parents love that song.
I'll see you tonight. Is that the one?
No, it's I'm not talking about moving in, and I don't want to change your life, but blah 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 blah. I really want to see you tonight. It was a big hit in the 70s. Back when my 70s. Parents used to have the radio on.
Yeah. I know. My 70s is the 8 tracks my mom had of Barry Manilow and John Denver, and so I grew up thinking I hated music. But anyway,
it's only a great music experience if fucking it's lip sync. Never mind. Let's keep going.
Yeah, please. We can always go on. By the way, shout out to Barry Manilow for writing the State Farm theme.
But not writing the song. I write the songs, which is ironic.
Which is a Alanis Morissette song. In any case, as we look and we hope to wind down the KRAVEN portion of this this conversation, what's the takeaway from this, Liam? Now, you felt like you may not have seen a worse movie than this calendar year in the theater, or you definitely referenced one that you and I saw together that you thought was better than this.
Borderlands. Well, here's the thing. Borderlands is a bad movie. Madam Web is a bad movie. Morbius is a bad movie. This is a bad, boring movie. And that's the worst part. If you're going to, at some point, when you're doing a comic book movie, there should be something fun. There should be something for kids, maybe.
Yeah.
It should be gonzo a little bit. What it shouldn't be is you deciding you're going to make a serious action movie using comic book IP because you're too good to make a comic book movie. And that's what this felt like.
Yeah, it is sort of what you used to get when you would get comic book movies, where it would be a director that hates comic books or comic book movies. And,
Right.
it was really more revolutionized, I think Tim Burton laying some groundwork, obviously the Richard Donner. And as I'm talking about these, Chris Tudhill's question, I think is relevant, is asking the best movie adaptation of a comic too controversial a question? Should I ask about the Trouble in Palestine ending for a quicker answer? I think that both of those questions would involve a lot of deliberation, but it's tough for me.
I got time.
Yeah,
Look, I'm on a podcast about Craven. I clearly have the time.
You clearly have the time. let's start with the comic book part and Palestine, if time permits, as we like to say. I think that the Richard Donner Superman is pretty close to perfect, even though they borrowed the ending from Superman 2, which they were filming at the same time, and it made Superman 2 a lesser film, but also a good one. For me, I think that the Sam Raimi Spider-Man 2 and the Bryan Singer X-Men 2, those are amongst my favorite that we've ever gotten. I think that they are almost perfect. Captain America First Avenger. So I'm just throwing some out. I'm not going to give you a one film answer, but I'm going to mention some that I'm like, oh, these ones really nailed the adaptation. Do you have any thoughts, Brody? And I'll ask Liam in a moment.
The X-Men movies were very good. I think Captain America First Avenger was terrific. Iron Man set them up for $100 billion of revenue.
True.
I thought it was terrific. Thor wasn't bad. I would go with Captain America and Iron Man as two of the best adaptions of a story. Yeah. And putting aside Superman, because in my lifetime, Superman was the most epic thing as far as superheroes, and at the time and where the world was and where I was in life, Superman, that first movie will always be the greatest thing ever. But if you watch it now, it's like little toy models in a pool of water coming down a mountain, and it looks terrible. But I would say that it still gets credit for being the first superhero movie that really was taken seriously and set up the world for superhero movies. So I don't think anything will surpass that because of the impact.
Liam, what is your answer, and why is it Ben Affleck as Daredevil?
Which I still haven't seen.
Check out the director's cut. It's actually better.
It's first of all, the right answer is the Indian bootleg of Spider-Man. So let's all just get our heads together.
Sure.
No, I look, I agree with all your choices. Like, I think Superman, despite like the dated back projection flying effects, I think
Who's got me?
What's that?
Sorry, I said who's got me? Who's got me?
Yeah. Yeah. Can I read your mind? Can you read my mind? But the thing is, like, the John Williams score is what holds it together, right? So it's like a great movie. That's a great movie. Spider-Man 2 is a great movie. Captain America First Avenger feels like a real film.
Yeah.
Like it's a real film, and it like they put care to take you into the time period that it's set in, and I really do think it's one of the best Marvel movies.
Well, just to interject, I always list it to me as the best of the MCU movies because it is the one that stands alone, and you're like, oh, this one's a film. They're all movies. They're not all films. That one's a film you can watch, never watch a Marvel anything before or after. And you're like, oh, I really like that Captain America First Avenger. Yeah.
And of course,
it takes place in Brooklyn. So,
and it's the least popular and least successful until the Eternals came out. Or Black Widow. But I think the best MCU movie is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. And wow, I really think that trilogy deserves all the credit it gets for kind of elevating that whole franchise.
Well, and what it did to really the MCU, but even, DC's able to take a page from it, and only partially because James Gunn directed it, but it took very obscure characters. That the only one I knew was Rocket Raccoon before I saw that movie. I was reminded, I'm like, okay, I've seen Gamora, I've seen Nebula, but really I had no familiarity with them, and that's what they did. And that's why I think the James Gunn second Suicide Squad film works better than the first one. Well, there's maybe a variety of reasons, but yeah. So
But I think
What-
Volume 2 is the best of that trilogy.
That's interesting because I did rewatch 1 and 2 ahead of seeing part 3, and I liked 2 better than I remembered. But I'd still rank it 1, 3, and 2, which is the way that I used to rank the Die Hard movies when there were only 3 of those as well, 1, 3, and 2.
But I'm also going to say one more, which is Deadpool 2, which
Okay.
just just another movie that balances kind of like serious themes with comedy.
Yeah, I mean the best thing
Pegging.
about Deadpool 2 is they take the time to introduce X-Force and then they all die in like a minute. I do love that. There's something about that quality of
when I saw it in the theater, I'd never seen Deadpool 1. I had no idea what I was getting into. I was only going because a friend really wanted to see it, and I just couldn't believe what I was watching the entire time. I was just like, man, this is what I wish more comic book movies would try to do, which is just replicate the feel of the comic book while also understanding that like it's a movie, and it like a comic book movie doesn't have to take itself too seriously, and it like can actually be goofy in the right way and kind of like fun.
Yeah, and despite what that reviewer said, this film was not particularly goofy. There are things that come off as goofy, but it's not intended to be goofy.
Mhm.
And Liam, at our screening, there were times that people laughed at moments that were not intended for laughs, and
Right.
that's usually not a good sign in your film. Brody, were you the only one, or there just wasn't anybody sitting in front of you? We had that image that you shared a little bit earlier, but
There was a couple sitting 3 rows up and 2 seats over to my right. There were 3 of us in the theater.
were they also silently having sex like the couple at the theater that Liam and I went to?
By the way, I was joking. It was a small theater, and there was a very large couple behind us.
Large people have sex too. It's harder.
Not quietly.
Yeah.
They might have been loud during the trailers, but that's neither here nor there.
The 2 other people that were in the theater owe me a debt of gratitude because I knew there was no post-credit or mid-credit scene. So I got up and I was walking out and I saw they were waiting. And I said, just so you know, there's no scene coming up.
I'm going to start doing that at movies that I know there is a post-credit scene.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know what? The Venom, you could have walked out and not seen that bonus scene and would have been fine. 3 hours later, they show that scene of the bug that lights up. Big deal.
So I agree with Liam's earlier point that this is a boring movie. And I had a bit of a disagreement with my friend Roxy Stryer, who people know from the old AfterBuzz days. We ran into each other at a party, and she contended, like Liam did, that KRAVEN is worse than Madam Web. And I think that they are both awful, horrific films. But I found Madam Web to be so much more boring than this because the 8 seconds of Sydney Sweeney in the Spider-Woman costume wasn't enough to make up for what I had just sat through. I thought that there were a couple of sequences that were interesting in this movie and visually looked good, even if the movie didn't make sense. I felt like Madam Web brought nothing to the table. Much like me with a big vat of popcorn, not putting any down on the table. I felt like Madam Web was the Christian Bladt of Sony films.
Dude, you could have gotten a hand job if you'd let me have some popcorn. That's all I'm saying.
Well, that's why I kept the popcorn to myself.
Whoa, was Lauren Boebert in the theater?
Nice.
Ew.
So where are you thinking about this, Brody? And I don't even remember. Did you waste your time on watching Madam Web once it was on Netflix?
Well, I would like to point out that you and I did not do Marvel podcasts together when Morbius came out.
Morbius, yeah, that's
Morbius,
true.
yeah. I was not invited to do the Madam Web podcast, and so based on that and those reasons alone, I'm out. I did not see either of those 2 movies because I wasn't. I didn't have the pressure of a podcast coming up. This is the only reason I went to see this movie. And I would say, not having seen Madam Web and only hearing people talk about it, KRAVEN didn't have one thing in it that Madam Web had. So I know KRAVEN was better, and that's Dakota Johnson, because she could ruin a Deadpool movie. That's how bad she is as an actress, as a cancer on film. She's just the worst, dumbest human being to watch being interviewed on late night talk shows. As soon as I saw she was in Madam Web, I'm like, that's it. I don't even have to see the reviews. I'm out.
Right.
Well, and as I
50
pointed out
Shades
at
of
the time,
blah.
as I pointed out at the time, what must it be like to be far and away the third best actor in your household of three growing up? And after I saw Madam Web, I was name drop interviewing Chris Claremont, and it came up, and I stumbled into the phrase that I wasn't planning to say this, and I said that she has all of the charisma of a wet paper bag. And I'm going to stick with that. That's really what she brought to that movie. And I think it's largely because of her that movie was so bad, but we're really just, when you're looking at different piles of dog shit outside the dog park, does it really matter which one is the worst of them? You don't want to step in any of them, Liam.
I mean, this is Sony's strategy has been really weird, like really not. I don't understand it. This is the studio that was like, look, everyone on the internet's talking about how bad our movie is, Morbius, so let's re-release it, because all those people making fun of how bad our movie was, they're gonna buy tickets and go see it again.
Yeah, I'm still waiting on Morbius 2, Morbid Time. It has not happened at this point.
But just my point is, like, Sony's like, people don't like these movies, so let's release them all in 1 year, and really spend the marketing budget that we shouldn't, and not fix them, and just kind of release them as is.
I feel like there has to be some, accounting reason why this had to come out this year, because as we were talking, I looked it up. So the film was originally supposed to be released. It's further back than I thought. January 13th, 2023. Then it became October 6th, 2023. And then it was delayed to August of this year. And there was an October date again this year. And then they're like, you know what? We're just going to put it in at the end of the year. And it's true. Nothing else came out that weekend.
Put it out with all the Oscar hopefuls.
Yes, right. Exactly.
They had 2 years to drop those voiceover lines. Think about that.
You could have just had somebody, there's a plugin that you can put in your iPhone that'll make it sound at least good enough. If the voiceover is really bad, just have a truck drive by in the background during it. You can hide it.
Or you turned it down.
Yeah.
Like there's a volume knob. I've actually used Pro Tools. It's not that hard.
Yeah. You use the little bridge tool and pull the volume up.
Yeah, that's true. You're right. It isn't that hard. I've done that. I'm an Adobe Audition guy, but you know what? We all have our picadillos, and I feel like this is not one of those. This is one of those movies that people will discover later, but not discover it because it's good and be like, oh my god, this is like a hidden gem. People will be like, wait, they put this in theaters? There's no chance. I think Aaron Taylor Johnson's fine in this. I mean, he's with what he's given to do. I think he carries this movie well enough. I liked him in Kick-Ass.
Six Pack.
Before. I like the movie Nowhere Boy, where he plays the young John Lennon. I like him in everything except for the Godzilla, where he was married to Elizabeth Olsen, because that's very creepy, because that's his sister in the MCU. And I never liked him as Quicksilver. Evan Peters is a great Quicksilver. Aaron Taylor Johnson was not. So
I'm going to say something really controversial now.
I can't wait.
This really might upset your fans, but David Zaslav, as much as people rightfully shit on that guy,
sure,
he looked at Batgirl. He said this movie doesn't work. It's going to cost a lot of money to fix it and then release it, and then maybe it still won't work. So we're just going to bury it. Like, we're just going to not release it and keep it in the Warner Brothers vaults. And people got really mad about that. But sometimes it's better to just not shit on your brand by releasing garbage.
Yeah, I mean, there are plenty of examples of that, and I'm thinking about the 15 years it took Axl Rose to make Guns N' Roses the Chinese Democracy album. And by the time we got it out, he had re-recorded it like 6 different times. I'm like, I bet any of them would have been better. So yes, I think sometimes, there's the idea of too many cooks in the kitchen, but there's also too much time in the kitchen.
I bet the version with Slash and Duff would have been better.
I mean, it absolutely would have been better. What, you think it would have been better than having Buckethead? Yeah. You know what? We can agree to disagree, Mr. McEneany. I was always a big Buckethead guy, but I think that that it's a great point, because if the motivation for Zaslav with Batgirl was, we're going to spend a bunch of money and it's still not going to be good, and that decision is probably heavily weighted by The Flash, which they did spend a bunch of money on, and I actually thought was mostly fun, but the movie was not successful. So I think once that happened, they're like, all right, what that Batgirl movie had was Michael Keaton as an older Batman, but The Flash also had Michael Keaton as an older Batman. So it's like, well, it didn't save that. It's not going to save this. So I think as long as that's the reason, and it wasn't just, well, we'll save, $1 to $2 million by not putting it out, which is a lot of money for the three of us. But for Warner Brothers, I think it's not.
Well, it's marketing, but I will say my favorite bit of trivia about The Flash is that the theater where it did the best in the world, that sold the most tickets and had sold out screenings, was the Burbank AMC 16.
Hey, wait a minute! I saw it there.
I think everyone in the business went to see it, and they all saw it at the Burbank 16. So I think everyone, including me, were like, "All right, it can't be that bad, can it?"
Well, I also did once that summer. I did buy a ticket to it at the AMC 25 in Times Square when I was in New York, because I needed to use the bathroom so badly, and I had AMC A-list. I'm like, I'm just going to burn one and buy a ticket to The Flash. So I hope that put it over the top. Sky the Magnanimous 8, who I think is someone that I expect to see tonight when I'm showing up on the BYB podcast. A little plug for that.
You're doing the BYB podcast?
Yeah, Quad asked me, and I told him I had an hour.
Say hi to Quad for me and see what he says.
I will. I don't want any more backup from that. I will say that I did a show with Liam earlier today, and he says hi. Sky the Magnanimous 8 says, I honestly feel like KRAVEN the Hunter should have been an adaptation of the comics. KRAVEN, world's most dangerous game, hunting heroes and villains, Silk, Spider-Man, Green Goblin. I mean, look, they would have gotten to a Last Hunt style story at some point, I think, in, that if they had made the trilogy, the trilogy. Yeah, well, that's what we
do.
That was the key thing.
Yeah. But in any case, I think that the character as he exists in the MCU would have been good. But if you were going to make this movie in this way, Spider-Man movies without Spider-Man, there's only so much success you can have. The first Venom was better than the other two, but none of them really worked. But you're able to handle that character. All of these movies would have at least been better if Spider-Man showed up in it. If you, even Madam Web, even with Dakota Johnson, I'm going to say it. And thank you, Chris Tuttle. I 100% thought you were just saying Trilly, and I was on board for it. I might even start saying, the Lord of the Rings Trilly, the original Star Wars Trilly. Yeah, I think we're fine. I think
Chris sees you.
Yeah, and there was a Venom Trilly, but I whoa, how about this? Daniel Drew, I've heard the word Trilly twice, and both times on this podcast. All right, wait a minute. That doesn't sound right. And because this ties into what Liam was saying, Batgirl at Warner Brothers DC shouldn't have been canceled. Maybe reshoot it to fit in its own universe, like feature Ben Affleck's Batman, Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman, might have made a successor viable. But you see, the problem with that is Shazam 2 had Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman in it, and still was a terrible film.
I would even say Wonder Woman 1984 had Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman in it, and that did not help.
Can we? I don't know if I've addressed this. Have I addressed this on your podcast?
I don't know.
1984. You realize it's a date rape film, right? It's a date rape film.
It is 100%.
Yeah, 100%.
She sleeps with the guy who doesn't know he's being slept with, and then sees him later, and she's like, "Hey." Meanwhile, she's like, "I slept with you," and he's like, "Who? That guy could have been saving his virginity for marriage. He could have gotten herpes. He could have gotten her pregnant. You slept with, and like they made it like it's romantic. Oh, they brought Chris Pine back in some other guy's body, and she had sex with it. That's rape.
Yeah, but she's hot, so that's
right,
the
and
plot
it's
point.
right.
So basically they told Wonder Woman 1984 the way a story like that would be told in 1984, like Revenge of the Nerds. Were you going to say something, Liam?
I was going to say I got some worse news, which is the original Wonder Woman
Yeah.
is a bad movie.
Oh no!
Oh, you're not the only person I know who
It's
feels
a
that way.
terrible movie. Unwatchable.
Terrific movie.
I thought it. I enjoyed it, but that take is not as hot as it might have seemed when it was out, because I've heard a few people say that they didn't enjoy that one either.
Look, I brought my daughter and I cried because she could finally see a woman star in a comic book movie, but it's not a good movie.
No. It's it's a real Ruth Conda forever. But look, Sony is gonna focus back on who knows what, but it's apparently not more of this. And I think that we were having the real conversation about what did in these standalone movies. And it was the deal with the MCU where Tom Holland is Spider-Man and he's populating the MCU. And now those movies are good, but you have to partner with Marvel. You didn't do a good job on your own. I am definitely an apologist for the two Andrew Garfield Amazing Spider-Man movies. I understand they're flawed. I would never try to convince somebody that those movies are great. I enjoyed them. But once they stopped there and they're like, all right, well, we're done with that. These movies were never going to really work because these weren't going to be Spider-Man movies. And having Venom lick a TV screen with Tom Holland on it didn't make up for the fact that they were never actually going to be in a movie together. So at the end of the day, should we just be thankful that the Sony universe is closed? What were you going to say, Liam? Tie it together with that point.
I'm about to take you really off track.
Oh, well, I know Mr. Brody has to go, so I don't mind getting taken off track.
I got time.
Okay, go ahead, take us off track. I've never seen a John Huston movie, so I'm not having that conversation that showed up in the chat.
No, it's just I think the Venom movie really worked.
The first one, or do you think all of them?
The second one ruined Maximum Carnage, and I haven't seen the third one. But it's like the first one worked. The guy is a real anti-hero, unlike KRAVEN, which was about a heroic guy who was out for revenge. It felt more like a fucking Beak Ray John Wayne movie than a
Dead Wish.
Yeah, no, it was like Death Wish.
Death Wish.
But it's like with Venom, it's like, look, we're gonna rip off Bullet and do a chase like Bullet, and I'm there for it. Of all the Bullet rip-off movies I've seen, Venom is maybe one of the top 3. And I just like the fact that they built this whole world that was independent of Spider-Man. And they found a way to like take Venom, which was one of Spidey's most iconic villains that could have only come from the Black, symbiote storyline. They figured out a way to do it logically without Spider-Man, and the whole Venom San Francisco really worked for me. Oh my god, dude! When I had all those comics when I was a kid, I wish I'd kept them. I could have paid my rent the last few years with those.
Would you like to buy one?
Or would you like to buy my slabbed book?
No, I think I had like what did it launch? Amazing Spider-Man, but I had or Spectacular Spider-Man, whichever one. I had that entire black suit saga.
Yeah.
It almost broke up him and Mary Jane, the black suit.
It did actually.
It didn't like it at all.
Close. No. The black suit was definitely problematic, but I agree with your thoughts on Venom. I feel like the first one worked well enough, and that's the problem, that they felt like they could make all of these movies and get away with it. To Sky the Magnanimous's point, WBDC announced canceled films that could be interesting to see. Batman Year One, which we sort of got with the Matt Reeves Batman, Justice League Mortal, The Trench, Batgirl, Sirens. But Sony made all these films and got off the ground. That's the difference. Sony was just spending like a drunken sailor and was like, let's make all these movies. Right. And Warner Brothers is like, Whew. Let's put a pin in it, and let's not do that Wile E. Coyote movie either.
Well, now Sony
Yeah.
can focus on rebooting Ghostbusters again.
Well, I think we'll
Can
do.
Can you imagine if 20th Century Fox did the same thing? Like they made X-Men movies without the X-Men and it was just Magneto or Galactus. No Fantastic Four. It was just Galactus.
I'm
And
listening. I want the Galactus origin story.
yeah,
From
absolutely.
the universe he grew up in before the Big Bang. Tell me more.
You mentioned Wakanda Forever, and that actually made me think of the Sony universe because, in my opinion, Wakanda Forever was Black Panther without Black Panther.
That's fair. I agree. Yeah.
You had some scrawny 45-pound woman in a Black Panther costume, and you expected me to believe she's beating up the Submariner. The whole thing is self-contained. Nobody from the Marvel universe showed up to help. Right? He's starting could start a global war, and nobody shows up to help them. So that movie was a standalone. It might as well have been the Sony universe. So
yeah. And by the way, of course, I've seen the Maltese Falcon. I was just throwing weight around about John Huston. I haven't seen most of them, but I did see the Maltese Falcon. In any case, Brody, I do know you have to leave. Liam and I will close things down just moments after you leave. Don't worry, Liam. I'm not
Before I leave, though,
your time, but yes.
If they do make the Maltese Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I will go see it.
I got to reach over for the bell for that one. That one was worth it. All right. But if people want to find more David Brody, where can they do that?
After this podcast, I'm not sure why anybody would. I'm the KRAVEN of podcasts right now. Check me out on the Brooklyn Boys podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, and find me on social media at David Brody. That includes Instagram, and I'm still calling it Twitter and Blue Sky and whatever else. You'll find me. I'm on Threads. Nobody uses Threads. I was
going to say, well, don't forget about Threads. And Brody.
I'm on LimeWire. I'm on Kazaa. Find me there.
Yes.
AM radio, ham radio.
Mexican radio.
Brody, David Brody is also his AIM username. Just look for him there. In
Muhammad's Radio.
We look forward to seeing you in the new year over on Marvel Movie Talk, Brody, because I want to make you watch every episode of What If Season 3 because of your reaction to how disappointed you expect to be. So that's a guarantee that we'll talk about that sometime in the new year.
That show went 3 seasons?
This is the final season. Yes.
I'm waiting for the episode. What if Storm wore a thong bikini? That's one of the episodes this season.
I got no problem with that episode.
What if Spider-Man was lactose intolerant? I think is the 3rd episode. So that's the one. All right.
Yeah.
I got to run. It was a pleasure. Right. Liam, it was nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you, man.
Enjoy the rest of the KRAVEN talk, my friends.
I will.
All right. We'll talk to Mr. Brody again soon. Chris Tuthill gives a big thumbs up. And Sky the Magnanimous thinks and believes in this day and age we don't have enough good directors, writers to go outside to go around to adapt our favorite comics, graphic novels to the screen. Studio interference aside, look, I mean, the truly adventurous, outside the box projects get canceled. Like I thought that the Ant-Man movie was great, but I really wanted to see Edgar Wright's Ant-Man that we didn't get.
Are you talking about Quantumania or the first
one? No, the first one. Edgar Wright was supposed to direct. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But and I thought the movie turned out fine, and I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. But I would have loved to have seen what Edgar Wright did with that. And and it's Disney, because Lord and Miller were supposed to do the Han Solo movie. No pun intended by calling it the Solo movie. But
but also,
go ahead.
Marvel is its own studio, and Kevin Feige's, what worked for them for a very long time was this top-down approach to filmmaking, where Kevin Feige is the top producer who makes a lot of decisions about tone and content, and these directors have to work within very tight construct of what they're allowed to do, what kind of stories they're allowed to write. Like the writers are sometimes handed stories, just like we have to set this up, and this up. And I think like a guy like Edgar Wright's just not gonna do well in that environment because he's such a left field guy,
Well, it's why they have a number of times elevated TV directors to doing their first feature,
Or James Gunn, who, I loved Super.
Yeah.
And I loved Slither. but he was not a billion-dollar director before he started.
The Russo brothers, I mean,
Right.
that's usually what the model is. And so I think that you have to play amongst some very narrow rules in the specific sandbox that Marvel is signing you to. And then you go on from there.
Because when you don't, you get the Eternals. And, that just...
Oh, I mean, what could go wrong if you have 12 lead characters in a superhero epic that the backstory takes like 1,000 or 2,000 years? I'm not even sure quite how far back it went.
And it's directed by a very serious director who, is very anti-capitalist.
Interestingly, I mean, think about how Kumail Nanjiani got in such tremendous shape to play a superhero, and then like nobody even saw it, and he's like, "Oh no!"
And it's not canon. Like,
I guess not. I mean, they never done anything with it, and I mean, they introduced the Black Knight, so maybe we'll see him. But yeah, I mean, those events there have been no ripples from the Eternals. And I mean, they even had Harry Styles and Patton Oswalt as Pip the Troll at the end of the film, and we haven't really gotten anything from any of those. Anyway, I'm glad that you sat through this movie with me because until I bullied Brody into seeing it, you were actually the only person I knew who I might have been able to podcast with.
Husey canceled.
Husey canceled. And I was going to have the two of you on, and I was going to pop out at some point and let the two of you talk about another stakeout, because that's the running joke for Husey, is that the two of you need to do a podcast about another stakeout, which I thought the first stakeout was a really fun film, but the thing that was missing was Rosie O'Donnell.
Right. And I got to be honest, I haven't seen it since I saw it in the theater, which is a sad thing to say.
It's probably even better.
So I need to watch that movie a couple times before I can really comment on it. All the ins and outs and
Chris Tuthill says Husey, the Fenian canceling bastard. I like him. He's an acquired taste. I had a different opinion of Husey before I started doing shows with him. You kind of have to understand. I don't want to look. It's in the style of Andy Kaufman. Sort of what he does when he would come on a show like Who Are These Podcasts and pull clips from a Bruce Springsteen podcast that were like about 2 minutes, and there actually weren't jokes in there. You kind of have to realize what we're going to get.
He's a bit of a wild card.
He's a bit of a wild card. Yeah. I always have to remind him what channel we're doing shows for. Because believe it or not, Liam, there is a PG-13 Husey. You can get that Husey. You just have to make sure that he knows that's the Husey you're bringing.
He's allowed to drop the F-bomb once and the C-bomb once to make it PG-13.
Right, but not on every stream can you call the late Queen Elizabeth a C word. As we wind down, Chris Tuthill, what do you want to be saying that's not been made? Sorry.
Let's wrap it up.
What do you want to see that's not been made yet or done to your taste next time the conversation segues? I as a kid, I grew up since we're talking about Marvel, having some Marvel movie talk here. I would like to see them adapt a series that I loved as a kid called Power Pack. It was two brothers, two sisters. They're all like 12 was the oldest. I think the idea of kid superheroes actually should have tremendous appeal. I think we saw a little bit of that with the Kamala Khan version of Ms. Marvel, more the TV series than the film that some people I know did not enjoy. But I don't need to name any names because I'm not here to...
Because he's on your podcast.
Yes, exactly. But you know what? Daniel Drew agrees that Power Pack would be such fun. So I appreciate that.
I would love to see, if they're going to keep with Spider-Man,
yeah,
I would love to see the whole Black Cat Kingpin storyline from the 80s.
Yeah, that's actually right when I started reading, and I talked to Al Milgram about that, who wrote and drew some of those. This idea that she makes a deal with the Kingpin because she doesn't have any superpowers, so then she gets these superpowers, but then she's in debt to the Kingpin. I agree, and
she's in love with Spider-Man, who's trying to take down the Kingpin.
But who she doesn't love is Peter Parker.
Right,
he takes the mask off, and she's like, "No, put it back on." I love that. I thought that was phenomenal. I thought that was great storytelling. And you're right. There had been a Black Cat story floating around, I think, for Sony. I would hope that they incorporate her into a Spider-Man movie and we tell the story in the right way. And
I feel like in terms of comic book writing, it's about as layered and nuanced as it gets.
yeah, which I don't know. I mean, I think that's the age that the decade that I started reading comics was in the 80s. So I have an affinity to that for sure. But Sky the Magnanimous says, thank you for this amazing podcast. So intelligent and thought provoking. It's mostly because of Brody. Let's be honest. Haven't seen Craven spoil away. Oh, don't worry. The people involved in making the film spoiled it. I don't think we have to worry about that in any case.
Here's how it ends. Russell Crowe dies.
That's true. That is a spoiler, but
and Rhino dies.
Rhino dies. Yeah. Chameleon doesn't. Chameleon doesn't.
But you don't care. You just don't.
He loses a finger at one point, though. And yet he can still play the piano a year later. So, all right. So there are your spoilers for Craven, everyone. Liam, I appreciate you taking the time to see bad movies with me,
of course,
and also talk about them podcasting. You missed our conversation about Megalopolis, which to me is still like, this movie is bad, but like that's a movie where it shouldn't be bad because the people involved, the amount of time spent, like that's a more disappointing movie. Is Craven less watchable? Maybe, maybe not. It's not necessarily for me to say. But what I usually try to do ahead of the Oscars is try to catch as many of the Best Picture nominees as possible. So hopefully you'll be able to join me for one or two of those.
I'm also a SAG member now, so I will be watching a lot of screeners.
Yes, I have. My wife is in the WGA, and we have yet to watch the Bob Dylan movie, which I look forward to seeing in the comfort of my own home. I don't need to see it on the big screen, but I'm intrigued by it for sure. So.
SAG delayed getting the screeners out because the people just weren't paying their dues. So, but now it's all settled.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
Now apparently that's the incentive to get your members to pay your dues is, but I'll tell you the documentary I haven't seen yet, and I'm really excited to see it. And it's called The Soundtrack to, oh, fuck. Oh my God. I'm sorry. I haven't had coffee today. Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat.
Oh, wow.
And it's just about all these jazz players who either got politically involved or were tricked into gigging during CIA orchestrated coups.
Wow.
This is like a very interesting period of history, and these jazz guys were just unwittingly dragged into CIA psych ops, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I just Googled it, and I tell you, it sounds fascinating. I did recoil a little bit when I saw the running time of 150 minutes, but it's shorter than Wicked. So,
well, I'm hoping to get a screener.
Yeah. Well, there you go. So let's SAG now.
I don't have to nap.
And Sky the Magnanimous says, Craven, everyone hunts, everyone dies. That's basically what we're saying here. In any case, I appreciate you taking the time. And Liam, if people want to find more of you, I'll sometimes see you in the chat on shows I'm watching. But where do people find you?
HeyIt'sLiam.com is my website. I haven't updated it in forever. I need to completely redo it, but it's there. You find me Hey It's Liam on Twitter and Radio Liam on Instagram. And I don't think I have any shows coming up ever. I'll be at my buddy T-Bone's place on Christmas Eve watching Die Hard.
Nice.
And I don't know. I'll be in the chat for Kevin Brennan's show in about 2 minutes.
Well, that'll be good.
While I make lunch.
I have seen you in there in the chat. That was one of the places that I was thinking that I had seen you. And you have a special that you shot that hopefully people get to see in 2025.
I have to send them my edit notes.
If they don't see it, then I'm glad Eric Connor and I went to go see it perform live because now it's like it's like Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Tonight we don't have to see it. We lived it. Anyway, tonight what?
Tonight I'm supposed to go see Nosferatu. So if you know where that screening is,
you can find it.
Let me know.
All right. I know you said that he trolls you a lot, but the fact that numero uno Josh Denny fan said, find Liam trolling a severely brain damaged man on Rock Bottom podcast.
I am on that once a week.
Yeah, you can always get me to bring up a Ray DeVito comment. My buddy Tom Kelly sent me a picture of he was at an event and he took a picture with Ray DeVito just to send it to me. So,
well, last time we were on, a man in his 60s told us a story about his first threesome, and it was just him sitting and watching his girlfriend have sex with another woman.
I don't think that's a threesome.
And I was like, I think you got cooked.
Yeah.
He's like, no, it was a threesome. I was like,
no. A threesome is not a spectator sport. It is
right. You shouldn't be able to just get up and go to the bathroom during a threesome.
You're a participant. Yeah. Holding the camera does not make it a threesome.
You shouldn't be sitting and eating a slice of pizza while you're having a threesome.
Unless everyone is eating pizza. Then maybe that has something to do with it.
Right.
But Sky the Magnanimous keeps coming in with comments that I want to bring, but I swear we're going to end. It'll never happen, but I would love to see film adaptations of comics and graphic novels that make sense and is good for the masses. Fingers crossed. Fantastic Four and Superman. Those are both coming up in 2025. I have high hopes for them.
I'm excited. I'm excited for Superman. I think that's going to be a good movie.
I think James Gunn has the right approach and he has the right touch for the character of Superman. And we will see what we get in 2025. Marvel Movie Talk will be back in after January.
You might be too edgy for Superman. I'm sorry. I just had to say it.
No, that's fine. And we'll be talking What If Season 3. And there's always so much more fun to come over on the Blackcast. BLADTCAST. That's where you can find me at Christian DMZ. Twitter, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, Friendster, MySpace, all of it. Thanks again to David Brody, Liam McEneany, and we will see you next time on the Blackcast. Right. And as the great Stan Lee would say, Excelsior.
As the great Stan Lee also said, "Nuff said."
He did